I'd like to welcome you to our 2017 Lake County Town Hall meeting. I am Betty Hensinger. I'm president of the Golden Triangle Federated Republican Women's Club, and I've been asked to be your moderator tonight. I'd like to make two short announcements. If you didn't hear me, we are Facebook live streaming this tonight, so you will be on Facebook Live. And I think it's through Representative Sullivan's office. And also, I want to remind you that we are going to have the Lake County Legislative Delegation hearings on Monday, August 28th at 1:30 at Lake Sumter Community College, so save the date. If you have questions for our senators and representatives, if you can make certain you give them to either Morgan or Sharon, and you must have your name on the questions as well as the city from which you live. So we aren't going to read any questions unless you identify yourself. Just want everybody to be clear on that. At this time, I'd like to introduce Senator Don Hahnfeldt, who's going to introduce himself, and then we'll go right down the roll, and each of our senators and representatives will take a couple of minutes, 2 to 4 minutes, to introduce themselves and provide a brief summary of their legislative priorities and their overview of the 2017 session.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the promotion. My name is Don Hahnfeldt, representative for District 33, which includes all of Sumter County and parts of Lake and Marion. And I'm happy to join this esteemed group of senators and representatives with whom I joined for the first time this year. So whether I look like a rookie or not, they have the rookie starting off this evening, and I'm happy to do that. I enjoy this group. I'm working on some things that have been referred to by many of us as sausage making, which I observed firsthand. And it's an apt description of what we did, especially this last time. Many things were different, I am told, while it was all new to me in Tallahassee this time. But in spite of that, in the end, we came out with a pretty good budget that improves lots of things from education to quality of life. And some of the things that I'm happy to have participated in is pushing back on a few things, which may have been a bit as perceived by local government, city and county, as a legislative overreach or perhaps micromanaging, and we will continue to do that. They included House Bill 17. They included Enterprise Florida and Visit Florida and so on. We came out with some pretty good results, and that was as a result of that sausage-making process. My concern is that we become more efficient in doing the things that you want us to be doing in Tallahassee to address your individual and local concerns. So please let us know, and I'm happy to see such a great crowd here tonight to participate, and I'm sure you'll give me some feedback. I see including some folks that have been regular visitors that are motorcycle riders because I put in a helmet law requirement that the bill did not pass, and I'm sure they're still celebrating. That may be the last applause I've gotten, and it's the first applause I've gotten in a long time, so I appreciate that by whatever means. So those are the types of things, though, that we'll be taking a look at each legislative session that make things incrementally better for you. As you probably know, our primary responsibility in Tallahassee is to pass a good budget that makes sense for the state of Florida. That's good for Florida, that's good for Floridians, and the bills that we pass, the legislation that gets through to the governor and signed out by him improves our quality of life, our standard of living, our safety and security, and keeps Florida on that path to prosperity. And we are in a position, I'm very pleased, and that's why I personally am in Tallahassee, to participate in what I believe is going to be the longest, strongest economic recovery that this nation has ever seen. We have a leadership team that's focused on that, and I look forward to being part of that. And your support and input is important toward that end. So thank you for coming, and I look forward to your feedback and questions should you have any. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to represent you in the legislature. It's truly a very humbling experience to know that we go there to try to communicate for, in the Senate's case, 500,000 people in Marion, Lake, and Sumter County. And I just wanted to thank you so much for the enthusiasm which Lake County has worked to move good government issues forward and to protect those things that are most special to us. And nothing significant is ever done alone. Nothing significant is ever done alone. But one person can make a difference, particularly knowing that we have you behind us, and in front of us, and before us. Let me introduce my staff. I'm going to ask my staff to raise, on that line of nothing significant is done alone, I'll tell you who helped get things done around there this year. My three folks hold their hands up high. In the very back is Matt McLean. He's the most reticent. He runs our district office in Lady Lake, just 2 blocks south of 466, and he is on the ground, Lake Sumter, both counties, hard as he can go. And then Alex Bickley, she works primarily in the Marion County complex for us, but again, these guys are generalists. They will go wherever we need to work, including coming to Tallahassee to help my third player, and that's Debbie Dennis. Debbie Dennis primarily runs the Tallahassee operation and the legislative work, but again, you see her in the district. They're wherever we need to be to serve people. So that's the team, and I want you to know, if you want me to know about something, tell me. If you want to make sure something gets done about it, tell one of them, because they are the people who follow up and before me and after me. There's no way we would accomplish what we do without their able daily diligence. And I want you to know them. We work for you. What I did during this session was have my wonderful first year, and thankfully with 13 previous years in the Florida House, I did know where the bathrooms were and kind of how to get around. Knew most of the players. That happened over 2 different sessions in the history for me of serving in the House. But this was my first year to represent you in the Senate, and it was a wonderful experience. One of the things that came to me was an opportunity to work on a bill for First Amendment. There's some things we need to protect: faith, family, freedom, and opportunity. Representative Daniels brought me a bill. She's a Democrat and a House member, brand new House member, and a black lady, and I'm an old redneck cracker. We came together and said, people ought to have liberty to express their faith. She brought this to me, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in school settings about what's acceptable. Yes, our rights are guaranteed by the Constitution. The First Amendment, including religious speech, is protected. But how that comes down to the ground, how it gets enabled, there's a lot of different interpretations going on. And we felt a chilling effect on people of faith, and we felt like all people of any faith or no faith should feel free to express themselves in a public environment. That bill is going all over the country right now. Almost weekly I'm getting national interviews about how we're dealing with this, because it is a phenomenon that in many of the public school settings, secular humanism became the dominant value system and worldview, and there's been almost an eradication in many atmospheres. Thankfully, in our counties, I think there's still a great flavor of people being anxious and willing, because we have to express our faith. But it needs to be done in an orderly fashion so that we're not disrupting anything. And so I'm very pleased about that. I think you're going to see some more debate come out of that, because it is controversial sometimes how to do that. But I think we're on a very good path. And the Senate President and the Speaker of the House and members of the House and the Senate could come together around this important First Amendment protection. The second area that I did some work on in passing legislation was for the Florida Association of Police Chiefs and our law enforcement. And they were so kind as this week in Miami at their conference to award me the Legislator of the Year for the Senate, primarily because of the work that we did carrying the bill with Representative McClain in the House on public records requests. There's absolutely abuse going on and a lot of gotcha just so they could sue the department for not giving them the information they want. And it just became a terrible game and a terrible burden of how do you comply with all of these requests in an orderly manner. We put some parameters on that I think will be very helpful. And these are dollars to taxpayers. You know, we want to give you best value for your dollar. We don't want to waste it and leaking out into these little lawsuits that they could win just because they played gotcha and tripped you up and you couldn't give them what they asked for. And this was a big issue for them. It's a big issue for me. When our great protections of open government get abused and used just to play games and harass people and not really fulfill the purpose for which they were established. So the other thing in law enforcement was did a lot of work on passing the fentanyl bill. I didn't carry the bill, but I lobbied other members. We got out of the Senate with only 2 votes with some very harsh penalties. We have 10 people a day dropping dead from overdose of fentanyl, and it is getting cut into cocaine. It's extremely dangerous. I had a police officer in Ohio just brushing dust off the seat, keeled over with an overdose. Thankfully, he had people there to rescue him right away. And this is part of this opiate epidemic that is sweeping our country and our state. And I know our law enforcement needed the strongest law we could get out to help them control this very hazardous situation. I'm very grateful to have put a lot of work into those 2 efforts for order with our law enforcement, and public safety is still job one of any of the things that government does for you. Keeping order and keeping chaos abated. We love our law enforcement. They are the reason that we can have a civil life. Am I right? Thank you all. Of course, it doesn't hurt personalizing it, the fact that I have a son that's a deputy sheriff. And so I think very personally about the sacrifice his family is making and all the men and women who stand beside him. And they are a very diverse and challenged group and a very committed group. The next area I loved working with Representative Sullivan on was opening the door on virtual education. We had an artificial gate that said you have to go to the traditional school the year before you can get in virtual, and if you're in virtual, you coming into virtual as young person, you've got to go back to traditional before you can qualify. This is not what school choice is about. It's about selecting pathways that work for each child. Whatever works for your family is the way we want you to move. Whether it's virtual, private school, whatever. And 80% of us will choose, I'd say 80% of folks will choose the traditional schools, so they love their traditional schools. But we do have about 195 F schools in the state, continuous F schools, and we require students to go to those schools. I felt this was a very ineffective, all it was doing was holding money in one place so that these options were eliminated, and it was holding back people. One of them was one of my granddaughters. I have 8 grandchildren, so another had another close-up glimpse of how that silly policy was working against the well-being of individual families and students to succeed. And that's what we're after, is all those young people to succeed in whichever environment works best for them. So thank you, Representative Sullivan. Would you give her a hand? She did a great job. Representative Metz and I carried another bill, and I'm going to leave for him to explain the exemption for first responders regarding cancer and its impairment. A very high set of numbers on risk for cancer for people in the hazmat area of first response going into all kind of settings. But he's my lawyer. He does a better job explaining that, so I'm going to leave that for his issue. And one other piece I was proud of as chairman, of Government Oversight and Accountability is we moved a number of people to the default position on our retirement system that if you don't care if you're in the defined benefit or the defined contribution program, then the default would be if you don't select to be in a specific place, we would put you in a place where you have the defined contribution. In other words, if you leave before 8 years, you could actually take that money with you. Whereas in the defined benefit, while it may be much stronger to many people to be in that overall pension, the fact is there's a big debate about which is best and which is the most fiscally accountable and conservative way to do business. I think we made some progress on that. We split the baby, we kept law enforcement out of that, but most of the folks went into defined contribution so that that's what they default to if they don't choose which plan they want. That was way more than you wanted to know, and thank you for having me.
Well, good evening. My name is Jennifer Sullivan. I represent House District 31, and I just want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight. In the 3 years of being elected and in the 15 plus years of being an activist in this community, this is the best turnout I've ever seen for a legislative town hall. So thank you for being involved. And I'm going to try to make my overview short because I want to get to your questions. But before I get to what I worked on, I would be remiss not to thank my staff. Here I have my district aide, Morgan Hatfield. She handles everything as it relates to our district and the calendar, constituent outreach. She does a phenomenal job. We have our office days on the calendar already for the next couple months. So if all your questions don't get answered tonight, please do schedule an appointment with her because I'd love to follow up with you one-on-one. I also have my chief legislative aide in the back, Ms. Sharon Neary. She keeps me in line and on schedule in Tallahassee, which is a hard task in and of itself because I'm always going a million miles an hour. They've done a phenomenal job helping put on tonight, and I'm very grateful for a great team because we've been doing a lot. First, I want to talk about the reforms in the House, and that we're in a time where we have some incredible leadership in the Florida House of Representatives. Leadership that is principled with a vision and is making a difference. And that starts with our Speaker, Richard Corcoran. He came in and initially changed several of our House rules, two of which I'll focus on. And the first one is putting in a lobbying ban for any representative that is currently serving, that once they get out of office, they can't lobby the legislature for the first 6 years. I think this is fantastic because it prevents legislators who have built relationships and influence with these elected officials from being able to turn around, get a high-paying job, and then use their friendships in the wrong way for this process. It needs to first and foremost serve you, not the special interest groups. So I was happy to see that put aside. Now, you wouldn't know this because of the way the media painted our budget process this year, even though hopefully not all of you believe 100% of the media, because I can tell you in the way that they reported a lot of things that happened this session, they're a little bit off. But I will say that I'm very proud of our budget process this year and what was introduced in the House specifically that required all of our legislative appropriation projects to have a bill. That meant that not a single appropriation project could be submitted in the budget unless it had been put in a bill that was then posted online, vetted, and had to pass a House committee before being able to put in the General Appropriations Act. That had never been done before. And that was a huge process and a huge step in putting transparency and seeing just who is asking for what and what those special projects are. So I'm very proud of that process, and that brought a lot more transparency and light. Now, you didn't hear the media talking about that. You didn't hear the media talking about every single appropriation project in the House being submitted, and it's still online to see. You can see every single member and every single appropriation bill that they introduce. And I'm very proud of that, and I think that made a difference and a lot less pork. And I'll tell you, as someone who sat on both the Education, the K-12 Appropriation Committee in the House, and the Judiciary Appropriation Committee in the House, there were a lot of projects that we vetted that didn't end up getting funded. Because even if they passed the House committee, that didn't mean that they got put in the budget. And bringing transparency and light and being able to ask the organization, the people that were running those organizations, what they were doing with those dollars, when they had no answers to accountability standards, they often withdraw those projects, or they didn't get funded at all. And I think that's a great step in the right direction, especially when you look at our budget and how many of our projects are just reoccurring. So I think that that's something that I ran on, looking project by project of where our money is going, because those thousands of dollars add up to millions, add up to billions very quickly. And I want to make sure we're using your money in the best ways. Personally, one of the bills I'm most proud of is my Keys to Independence bill that was signed into law this year. This provided a means for foster care children to be able to get a driver's license, the first step to independence. We need to do more to help these students be self-sustaining, being able to drive, get a job, provide for themselves before they age out of the foster care system is a great step in that direction. Additionally, my constituent bill for the year was one that had to do with gun shops. There was a local gun shop in our area, in my district here, actually in Eustis, that was broken into. And though we have an incredible police team, and they were there within 10 seconds of being called, unfortunately, it was 8 minutes from the time that the shop was broken into until the police were called because of all the statutory required phone calls that the alarm company had to make to the business and the owners before the police were called. So we changed that this year. It's a huge public safety threat, so that if there is an alarm company that is protecting a business that sells firearms or ammunition, they are required now by law to call police first before calling any of the business owners or business themselves. One of the bills that I worked on that unfortunately didn't get heard in the Senate was judicial term limits, and that would have put 12-year term limits on our judicial branch of government for all DCA judges. I don't know about you, but I think it's time the judiciary branch stopped legislating from the bench and started having greater accountability measures. I've sponsored that the past 2 years, and it's made it out of the House the past 2 years. It's important to note that that is a House resolution, so even if it had passed out of the Senate, it would have needed to go on the ballot ultimately for the state of Florida, the Floridians, constituents to decide. So that's a House resolution. There were several other things I worked on as it relates to education, but I'll wait to go into those based on your questions if that's what you want to hear about. But thanks again for being here.
Good evening. My name is Kelli Stargel, and I'm new to the Lake County delegation. I'm not new to the legislative process. I'm in my second term in the Florida Senate. Served 4 years in the Florida House prior to that. I represent most of Polk County, about half of Lake County, South Lake County. I am the chair of the Finance and Tax Committee. I was also the chair of the Communications, Energy, and Public Utilities Committee, as well as the vice chair of the Health and Human Services Appropriation Committee, as well as the deputy majority leader. So I was very busy on a lot of variety of things that dealt with a lot of the different members of the House and the Senate, as well as a lot of the legislation that I myself was working on. But I would say the one piece of legislation that took the most amount of my time, and is probably one of the most beneficial to the state, was the tax package that we put together for the state of Florida, giving $180 million back to the people of the state of Florida. Part of that tax package was a start on getting rid of the commercial lease rent, or the commercial rent tax. We weren't able to do all of that. It was just too expensive at this point, but we started down the path of taking that back so that people who rent property don't have to pay property taxes, and in addition to that, pay sales tax on top of that. So we started down the path of fixing that, as well as the tax-free back-to-school holiday, the disaster preparedness holidays, some of those holidays that you hopefully are taking advantage of. Will be something, that's what we worked on this year. In addition to that, a couple of the other pieces of legislation that I worked on. In my previous years, I've always worked very heavily in education. I only had a few bills in education this year as far as I worked on a middle school study, so it's something we could look at statewide to see why many of our middle schools are failing. In addition, I worked with Representative Valeka in the House, or Chairman Valeka in the House, which had a priority in working on civics education, which I think is vitally important in middle school, all the way up even to some requirements now for our college students to make sure that they have some civics education going into college. And we weren't able to do that as a standalone bill, but that bill did become part of the comprehensive education package that the media has tried to tear apart for months on end. There was also some other parts of that bill that we worked on dealing with early childhood education that also became part of the education package. In addition, I worked on a bill that dealt with adoption benefits. We did a bill a few years ago funding adoption benefits to our public school and public officials, and public employees to have the benefit of adoption benefits from the state of Florida, and recognizing that adoption is beneficial, but it's often expensive, and usually your state employees are not making the salary to be able to afford those types of things. We've appropriated money for those adoption for people who want to adopt children, but we neglected to include in those appropriations a few years ago charter school and virtual school teachers. So I went back this year and we included charter school and virtual school teachers in the ability to have those adoption benefits. Also worked on an issue dealing with the Civil Air Patrol. We have some Civil Air Patrol that work out of in our Lakeland Airport, and they go and oversee the fires and tornadoes and hurricanes. And some of them were compromising their jobs when they were serving the public by doing their voluntary efforts in Civil Air Patrol. We changed the law this year and said that if you're doing your voluntary business of something that was an emergency disaster, that you're not going to be at risk of losing your job. It may have to be unpaid leave. That's okay, but you won't lose your job when you're helping a better society by using your pilot skills in Civil Air Patrol. So it was a very busy year for me, worked on a lot of variety of things, but again, like Representative Sullivan said, I want to hear what's of interest to you. That's just an overview of who I am. Oh, I also want to recognize my legislative assistant, Chris Dowdy, who is in the back of the room there. If there's any questions, if you can't reach me, you can reach Chris. Also, he's the #1 person when you call our office. Typically, Chris will be the one who answers the call and does with constituent services. In addition, who are not here with us this evening is Rachel Barnes and Chad Davis. So I have 2 other staff members as well. But thank you for being here, and I look forward to your questions.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to stand up so I can think better on my feet. And I hope some of you in the back see me, although that's not necessarily a good thing. I want to thank you for being here today, and also I want to thank Chair Sullivan for her initiative in putting this together, and also thank her and her staff for the hard work that went into getting this organized and promoted, and so that we could all be here together. I represent District 32, which is all of Leesburg and everything south of Leesburg in Lake County, all the way to the Polk County line. Last week I had 2 town hall meetings in my district. This week I had 2 additional town hall meetings in my district. And I had between 4 people show up and about 30, 35 show up. So I'm not the reason we have a good turnout here tonight. I can prove that to you. So I want to compliment the other 4 members for their job. I want to introduce my staff. I have Hannah Duchesne in the back of the room. She's my legislative aide. Hannah Duchesne, and she does a fantastic job working with me on legislation, both in the district, and then when we have committee meetings and sessions, she goes to Tallahassee and helps me there. I also have in the district office in Groveland, Amanda Geltz. She's not here tonight, but she handles the constituent concerns. So if you have a problem with a state agency or program, you would call the district office and she would take care of that for you and bring me in if she couldn't get it resolved for you directly. So I appreciate the good work with both of my staff members. We couldn't do it without them, as Senator Baxley said. I want to mention to you that I have a newsletter on the table back there for the District 32 constituents. We mailed it out to as many as we could afford to do that. It looks like this, and it has a lot of information about the big picture bills that pass the session, as well as my own sponsored legislation. So if you have any interest in seeing more detail, I would recommend you get a hold of this. If we run out of copies, if you go to the House website and find me in the alphabetical list of representatives, then you can click on the newsletter button and it will show up right there as well. And you can also ask us to send you one if you would like. I want to take a few minutes just to mention a couple of things that I've worked on this year that actually passed. I had 11 measures that I sponsored in the House, plus that doesn't include 5 budget bills that Chair Sullivan mentioned how the process works for the budget bills. So I had 16 measures in all that were under my responsibility. 4 of them were general bills. We had 3 committee bills, I had 2 local bills, I had 1 memorial, and I had 5 budget bills. So of all those, I'll come back to the budget items, but of the 11 measures, and I had 1 resolution, so that adds up to the number that I had total. The resolution was Armed Forces Day, and that's an easy one. But I had only 3 of my member bills made it through the House and the Senate and became law. So I'm going to give you an overview of those 3. The other 7 general measures didn't make it through the Senate. They did pass the House, however. So we're going to have to consider going back again. And I did appreciate the opportunity to have sponsors in the Senate who are at the table here, Senator Baxley on first responders and Senator Stargel on government accountability. They're both great sponsors to work with, and I really appreciate their hard work. Anyway, the 3 bills that made it all the way through into law. The first one is the First Responders Tax Exemption Implementation Bill. 2016, a constituent contacted, or 2015 actually, a constituent of District 32 contacted my office and said we ought to have an exemption for totally and permanently disabled first responders whose disability was caused by line of duty service. And I thought about that and decided to take that on. So last session in 2016, we put that measure on the ballot. It was on the ballot in November, and 84% of the voters in Florida authorized us to pass an exemption in statute. So the authority was the amendment, which was your will and the will of the rest of Florida. And then the bill I sponsored this year with Senator Baxley was the implementation of that. And what we're trying to do there is provide guidance to the property appraisers from Key West to Escambia County, everywhere in between, how to handle the requests that come in for the exemption. So we established a system where we first of all defined disability, and we said if you are able to work in a gainful occupation, then you're not disabled. Even if you have a determination, you still have to be unable to work. So if someone qualifies for that, they have to then come in and bring proof of their disability. And that would be either a Social Security letter from Social Security and one certification from a Florida physician, or if they don't have Social Security because they're not under it, then they bring two certifications from two separate Florida doctors certifying that they meet that definition of disability. Plus they have to bring their extant documentation about their disability line of duty connection, such as the accident report, criminal investigation report if there was a shooting or something like that, to prove connection between their disability and line of duty service. There was one thing that came up sort of late in the process, and that was there was a question about why we were not extending this to out-of-state first responders. We limited it to Florida-based first responders. And the reason for that was there was a pre-existing exemption for surviving spouses of first responders who were killed in the line of duty. That was implemented in 2013. And that definition of first responder for that exemption was Florida-based. So we simply adopted the same definition in our bill that was already there. We didn't create a new definition. But there was some misunderstanding that maybe we were carving out the out-of-staters from the exemption. We didn't carve them out. They were never in it for the surviving spouses, and we simply used that same definition. But what I did, I put language in at the end of the process to make sure that if we have a Florida first responder who goes to Haiti for an earthquake relief mission at the request of the state of Florida, or Colorado or California to fight wildfires, and then becomes disabled out of state, that because they're there on a mission from Florida, they would still qualify. So when that language showed up, the out-of-staters thought we were carving them out, but we never carved them out. They were never in because we figured we should limit this to those who serve the state of Florida, since that's the entity that they're getting the tax exemption from. So I wanted to put that out there for a wider distribution. The other two bills that made it very briefly, one was a local bill that the delegation unanimously supported that I sponsored for the Lake County Water Authority. This is a county-wide special district that has its mission the quality of our lakes, streams, and canals, and they do a fantastic job, in my opinion, of doing that. But in prior years, board members who served previously, not the ones there now, were sort of drifting a little bit far afield on that. They built a massive active park called Hickory Point Park. They sponsored fishing tournaments on the lakes with public dollars, and we just thought that wasn't the real core mission, and the current board members haven't done that, like I said, but I thought that enabling legislation should be tailored to the exact mission that they're good at, and take away some of these other broader authorizations that were in there, like eminent domain, like the ability to seize state-owned property for whatever reason they want, also promoting recreation and tourism. We have plenty of agencies that promote recreation and tourism. We don't need a special district taxing our properties to do more of that. So we took all that out of there with the local bill and strengthened their ability to do their core mission, including language about clearing obstacles to navigation in our streams, lakes, and canals. So that passed unanimously in the House and Senate, and the governor signed it into law. And finally, the last bill that made it through was the North Lake County Hospital District bill. All that did was change the dates in the current law about the expiration of the district. It was going to expire this year if the voters did not approve its continued existence for 10 years in the referendum that occurred in last November. The voters did approve it to continue, so we had to change the sunset date to 2027 and the new referendum date to 2026. So that district is still going to be accountable to the voters in 10 years like the reform legislation in 2012 that I sponsored provides for. But we had to update the language of the bill to make sure that happens. So those are the three that made it all the way through the process. The other ones that didn't make it very quickly, the government accountability bill that Senator Stargel carried for me in the Senate, every committee, except the last one. She couldn't get it through that one at the end there because they were bottlenecked, I think, in that committee. But she did a fantastic job working that with me. That one defines fraud, waste, and abuse. It requires the implementation of internal controls to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse. You would think that's already there in the law, but it isn't. We were trying to put it there. So we're going to probably bring that one back in 2018. I know Senator Stargel will consider taking that on again. And then we had some other bills also, but I wanted to mention that one because she worked so hard on that with me. And Senator Baxley worked hard on the exemption bill. So, and I finally want to also give kudos to our chair, Sullivan, for her work on the Public Integrity and Ethics Committee that I chair in the House. She's the vice chair, and we partnered on some bills there. We had 5 committee bills come out of that, including bills to implement the 6-year ban that's in rule now. Rules can be changed every term by the representatives that are elected. So our goal with the Speaker's leadership and vision was to put that 6-year ban in the Constitution and also in statute. And we did that in the House and sent those to the Senate, but they weren't taken up. And the other thing we had was a local government ethics reform bill that I sponsored through the committee. And Chair Sullivan took income solicitation and the general ethics bill about soliciting employment as a public officer when you're in office, what you can and cannot do to tighten that up. So she sponsored that out of our committee and ran it through the House floor, but that didn't make it through the Senate either. So we have a lot of work to do in 2018, and it'll be my last session because I'm term limited, but I've been a privilege and honor to serve the people of Lake County and in the beginning term 2 other counties as well in the Florida House since 2010. And I thank you for the opportunity and the honor. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much.
I want to remind everybody at this moment, if you have cell phones that haven't been turned off, would you please take a moment and silence them, because we've had a couple of rings go off. And if you haven't filled out your question, please do so. Sharon still has some forms if you raise your hand. And we have lots of great questions today, and so I am wondering, I guess what we'll do is let the senators and the representatives decide who's going to answer each question rather than all 5 of you answering. Okay. All right. I'm going to read them in the order in which I was given them. And there are a couple of duplicates with the questions, so I won't repeat the second duplicate. The first one's from Nancy Hurlbert. She asks, will any of you commit to sponsoring the statewide anti-fracking bill?
Nobody wants to answer that one.
All right, thank you. One thing I want to mention about House members in particular, this is not to get out of the question, I'll answer the question, but I just want you to understand, in the House we're limited to 6 bills per session, 6 general bills. So I typically, in this early in the process, we have a session starting in January, it's July, so we have 6 months to go. I don't commit to bill slots this early unless it's something that I've already decided because I couldn't get it through last time, like the government accountability bill. But I've come to think more about the fracking issue over the past several years. We had a bill in the House a couple of years in a row that we voted for and sent to the Senate. It didn't make it through the process, but it was intended to study fracking, and only after it's proven that scientifically it could occur without damaging our aquifer would we then go forward with regulating it and allowing it. But I've been reading more about it, and I'm sort of now reconsidering that position as being the best one in Florida. I'm sort of leaning towards just saying we shouldn't do fracking in Florida, but I want to study it more. Because I just I'm concerned about the aquifer for a lot of reasons. There's different things about it with regard to withdrawing water at the upper Florida and aquifer, the lower Florida and aquifer, and what the effects will be on our lakes and rivers and springs. And so if we add another element of uncertainty into it with fracking, unless we're convinced scientifically that it can be done without any risk, that would be the only way I would want to support it. And that's what we were trying to do with that study. But I'm also just, I'm being open and candid with you that I'm sort of wanting to learn more about it before I make a decision, a final decision. And I don't have to decide until there's a bill to vote on, so that's the good thing about the process. But I am very much aware of the arguments for and against, and I'm sort of now out of the I'm definitely in favor of studying it and letting it go forward, and if it's scientifically valid, into a more, I'm skeptical of it now. I'm more skeptical of fracking with our aquifer and the considerations that involve it. So I will keep an open mind on that issue. Thank you.
Vicky Meyer asked, would you help us, the Lake County Abate chapter, to receive motorcycle registration fees that are put into a fund for motorcycle safety and awareness, and which we have received at different times, but recently have been vetoed by the governor. We use the monies for presentations we do in the school systems as well as anywhere else we are invited. It's a free presentation.
Thank you. I'd like to answer that because I've worked with Doc several years in trying to restore this agreement that was originally made, that Abate would take care of this training. And we definitely have a void in the area of motorcycle safety training of motorists being aware and being more tuned in. This distractedness of vulnerable road users is costing us lives. And to my disappointment, the couple of times that I've gotten it all the way through and into the budget, the governor hasn't agreed with me about it. And I think a lot of that is coming from within the Department of Motor Vehicles, of wanting to handle that kind of training and that kind of awareness in a different way. But as these folks know, years ago, there was an agreement made. They would tax themselves on their plate, on their motorcycles, to fund this training. And I'm a guy that promises made, promises kept. But with term limits and different people involved and different staff members turning over, somehow we kind of forgot the promise. I commit to continue to file it so that we keep communicating the need to spend some energy into accountability in that area. And I'm also looking at another bill, a little different arrangement than the bill we filed before, that will highlight vulnerable users and have like a move over or slide over requirement. And so we had one of our former members get run over on a bicycle this year, great friend, Frank Atkinson, who was a county commissioner in Osceola after he left the legislature and served in different ways. And Frank is a very cautious and energetic guy. And it just highlighted for me afresh, we have to raise awareness that as we drive vehicles and we confront pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists, they don't have the same protections. And we definitely need to raise their sense of responsibility and awareness of all drivers for these vulnerable users. Also, some of our law enforcement, this lack of observing the move over and making room when there's a hazard, it's cost law enforcement lives right here. Highway Patrolman Bishop, she lost her life because of just being out there in that vulnerable posture as a pedestrian doing her job. But that's just illustration. I think as we get more and more people on the roads, as we keep growing, we're a very healthy state. We're going to have to be more and more conscious. So I commit to continue to work with you on raising that awareness and trying to dig under all this and see what is the reason that this is getting vetoed. Obviously, the legislature's been willing to put it in there a couple times and try to restore where we were and what the commitment was. Thank you for working the cause. Stay in the discussion. No discussion is ever finished there. This is how 20 million people have that discussion. And thank God we get to do it. Don't you dare quit.
Our next question is from Frank, and if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize, Frank. It's Pilot. He asked, there was a 40% cut in mental health central receiving units at the last minute. Is there any chance some or all of these funds will be restored?
In regards to mental health, I think that continues to be an issue facing our state, and I was excited that those funds were appropriated and had made it till the wee hours of the morning, it seemed like, in the last part of negotiating. In regards to mental health, though, from a judiciary appropriation standpoint, what I will tell you is encouraging is that we've had huge issues having correctional officers in our jails and prisons, our prisons, because it's statewide, stay, and there's been a high number of turnover. We spent over $50 million last year in overtime alone. Had as a state, we appropriated the $45 million needed in order to hire more correctional officers. We would have saved $5 million as a state because we would have had enough officers, we wouldn't have needed the overtime. On the flip side of that, though, what's happening is the correctional officers that we do have in the state, once they're trained, they can easily just go to the county jail system, get paid a significant amount more, and therefore they're leaving our state system, but our state is footing the bill for their training. So what we did this year to help correct that is we put $44 million aside to increase the salary of the correctional officers that we already have so that they make the same amount and are as county employees would, and they're more inclined to stay, therefore we don't have the high turnover. If you don't have as high turnover, you're going to be providing better services for the inmate. Specifically in regards to the mental health, though, we hired 104 new mental health specialized officers, and we're creating in the Wakulla Correctional Institute a whole new mental health division. That's a whole building specifically for mental health, and we put $14.3 million in the judiciary budget. So even though there was a significant cut in that area that was mentioned in the budget, I do want it to be noted that we're creating a whole new center specifically for mental health. We've hired over 100 mental health specialists, and we're actively making steps in that direction to help correct that problem.
Ben Johnson asks, with the recent issues of annexation of Sorrento Springs, Red Tail, and Sorrento Day of Red Tail, discuss the state statutes on revising annexation and de-annexation.
I guess it's back to the guy who didn't draw many people in. Now you know why. Basically, I don't have a lot of information on this, but I've been reading it in the newspapers, and so my knowledge is based on that. And every time I've read about it so far, I felt that this issue is a local government issue. It really isn't something the state should try to interject itself into. If there's a need to revise the annexation statutes, it hasn't been brought to my attention. No one has come forward and said, here's a proposal for change that is necessary. So I think that's what this meeting is about, is to solicit that type of input. It wouldn't be, just to differentiate between what I said at the beginning and what I just said. It's not a state issue, it's a local issue. That is to say, there's statutes on the books now, and it's the local officials that decide if facts and circumstances meet the requirements for annexation or not, and if those agreements are binding or not, and so forth. But if there's a flaw in state law that is not allowing the system to work properly at the local level, or the standard itself is wrong for some reason, I haven't been told that, but that's the type of information we need to get from you so we know that maybe there's a problem that needs to be solved, and we could either run a bill or run an amendment to a bill that's running. So I think this is one of those issues we don't have an answer for you tonight, except to say we're willing to listen to what the problems are, and maybe if it's a state issue, one of us can take that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. And I would like to point out, as this question comes up that may be a local issue and not a state issue, we get lots of questions that are either city, county, even federal, and beyond, of all types. And I would encourage you, if you have any questions and you're not certain who to call, don't hesitate to give us a call. I was remiss in introducing my legislative aide, Dawn Farity. Give us a wave, Dawn. But if you make a call to any one of our offices, it should be one call away from the right person. So don't hesitate to give us a try, because there's a vast amount of experience among our staffs, whether it's at Tallahassee or local, to be able to get you to the right person and get the answer for you. And that's our job. So let us be your advocate in getting you either the right answer or the help that you need, whatever the question may be. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add a touch to it, there are lots of issues, and a lot of them come from South Florida, quite frankly, where there are local arguments about how to do something, and then the prevailing side wants to go to Tallahassee and get us to do it, and then we all across the state live with the fallout. And so we do try to be sensitive about not jumping in every local issue when it could be worked out at home. Probably more successful. I can't help but think immediately after raising 4 boys and a girl, how many times I said, you can work this out between you, or I can work it out. But if I work it out, neither one of you may like it. And that happens again and again with local issues, that we don't need to make them a statewide compliance concern. We just need to hang in there and work it out locally many times. I don't know if this is one of those. That's why I'm glad my lawyer answered first.
William Day asked, what is being done about the builder-controlled HOA boards? I am new to Florida and recently moved into Waterside Point in Groveland. The Groveland City Council could not hold Cal Atlantic to their commitments to the residents, including promised amenities and resort-style standards. Even with legal representation due to Florida laws, the community has not been able to hold Cal Atlantic responsible.
Well, my first term I sat on civil justice. I'm now on criminal justice, but issues regarding HOAs were commonly heard in civil justice. And so I can tell you, as it relates to a bill, I'm not specifically working on an HOA bill, and I haven't. However, I'd be happy to meet with you personally and hear your concern out. What I do have experience with is Sullivan Ranch, and there was a lawsuit that went forward regarding certain things that weren't kept by Syntax, which is the builder there. There were also some other issues, and I had hosted a specific town hall specific to all the residents in Sullivan Ranch to help hear out their concerns and then be a voice for them. And so I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't know about all the statutes of HOA in and out, but I'm certainly willing to learn them, to be an advocate for you, and to work on your behalf to make sure that you're represented and have a voice, because these builders shouldn't be able to take advantage of new homeowners like this, with constituents like yourself, and there does need to be accountability there. That if they make a promise and you move in under a certain premise, that needs to be upheld.
Edward Lalonde asks, give 3 critical problems former felons encounter when they have completed their sentences and are trying to find gainful employment and enhance their education.
The question was, explain some of the problems that they face.
It says, give 3 critical problems former felons encounter when they have completed their sentence.
Sure. Right. There's obviously some challenges with getting their driver's license. I'm sure they have a lot of legal challenges in getting things potentially expunged or sealed. The problem that we have in this society is, unfortunately, the allegation is enough to criminalize you. And in our society today, with Facebook and Twitter and immediate news and the need for sensational news, you've got people who are capitalizing on an allegation even sometimes. So it's not even felons who are experiencing problems. You have individuals who have had a charge against them that's barring their abilities to get a job and barring their abilities to do a lot of different things. Some of the things I have worked on is trying to bring some common sense to some of those things through the process. I recognize that we don't want to have certain individuals possibly in healthcare who have a pattern of done some things wrong, but I think to some degree we've gone overboard when it comes to healthcare, childcare, even the taboo subject of sexual offenders, but there's a real problem in that they have no place to live at all. They have no way to reestablish their lives. So I think that you are seeing that movement in the legislature, House and Senate, to go back and look at a lot of the things that we've done. I think you're seeing some look again at some of the mandatory minimum situations as well. We need to have common sense. We need to make sure that we are giving people every opportunity to be rehabilitated and to come back into society, but at the same time have our penal system be enough to keep the people who should not be in society out of society. And that's a challenge. So I know that felons coming back do have a multitude of challenges, but not just felons. People even have some of your misdemeanors and even some of your lesser crimes as well.
Lori Baxley asks, the 274-page education bill has some good things in it, but I would like clarification on when a school receives an F, it must do one of two things with the very first F. It must either close or convert to a charter that very next year. This year, school grades were released in June. How would this be expected to be done by the next school year? If the school was converted to a charter, would the parent have a choice on whether their child goes to that charter? Charters are run by boards and not under the same jurisdiction as public schools. If we are truly about choice, will parents have one?
There's a little bit of some inaccuracies in that. It's actually not on your first F that you have to go into that type of a situation. It's usually after you've had, I believe, 3 Fs, I think you start going into conversion. And it's also not just close and become a charter. There's multiple opportunities for the district to come in and do a plan of how they're going to turn around that school. And the reason why we do that is I would hate for my child, your child, any of our children to be in a school where they're stuck there for 3 years as an F school, then someone comes in, then someone starts to look at it. And at that point, you've got a child who their future is compromised by the opportunity that they may not have had to learn. So we come in and we are very strong on schools that are perpetually Fs. As far as the charter schools having the opportunity, that's one of the options that they can have is go to a charter school or become a charter school. You can have a district managed system. You can have the district actually now, some of the new provisions that we did in 7069, the district can actually make that school a charter type school, which gives them some flexibilities in teachers and hiring, gives them some flexibility with regards to some of the collective bargaining and some of the various things that gives them opportunity to come in and really make some changes in that school. So it's not on a 1F. It has to be perpetually, I think it's 3 Fs, or 2 Fs and a D, or I'm not sure exactly that breakdown, but it's multiple years in a row. And you also can't do 2 years and then come up a little bit and then go back down again either. We want to make sure that you are actually making measured improvement. And that's to protect our children so that our children are not stuck in a school that's failing. In addition to that, we have a litany of other things that we offer the children who are in those schools, opportunities to go to any other school in the state that has room for them, that may even be in or out of their district. We give them the opportunity to tax credit scholarships so that they can go to a private school. We have opportunities to go to magnet school programs with prioritized enrollment. So there's a variety of things that we do, but we do these things so that no one's child is stuck in a school that is perpetually failing.
Edward Lalonde asks, what are the civil remedies for terrorism passed by the House and Senate and signed by Governor Scott? House Bill 65.
Nobody knows.
I don't have a whole lot of information at my fingertips on this bill. I did vote for it, and what it does, it establishes a civil cause of action so you can go after the wrongdoers for their assets, and it would be very important to do that because a lot of these terrorists, not all of them, but a lot of them are sponsored by organizations that have a lot of money and assets. We've seen some news reports of organizations out of cover in the Middle East supporting terrorism with financial support, and that's why their neighboring nations have cut off relations with them. These terror networks are very difficult to track down, and one of the best tools that we have is to follow the money. Well, if you follow the money and you find it, you want to be able to actually get it and not just find it. So the civil remedies for terrorism legislation establishes civil causes of action that will strengthen our ability to go after the financiers of terrorist activity in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Ed Lalonde also asked, which members of the panel are members of ALEC?
Alec, that's federal.
I am not a member of ALEC. I've attended a few of their conferences for legislative information, and I found it to be very useful when I did attend, but I've never joined.
What are they?
Oh, ALEC stands for American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a consortium of legislators from around the country that get together and to study issues, and they draft model legislation. And it does have a conservative principled orientation. Thank you.
I am a member of ALEC. I actually was the previous chair of the state for ALEC. I'm also participated in NCSL, which is the National Conference of State Legislators. I've also participated in the Southern Legislative Exchange Council. I'm also on the board for the Education Commission of the States. And what I will say is all of these organizations are legislators coming together, sharing common ideas of what we have done, what works and what does not work. Many of our states are facing similar situations, similar problems, similar things with education, with felons, with immigration, all these things. And instead of having each state have to reinvent the wheel, if you will, these conferences give us the opportunity to come together and to discuss. ALEC is a little bit more of a conservative. I would say NCSL is a little bit more liberal. I tend to go to both because there's something to be learned from both sides of the aisle, both types of people, both schools of thought. It's a conversation-starting organization, and I'm fortunate in that I have the time with my day job, which is property management, to be able to do some of these things. It's unfortunate more of our legislators don't have the opportunity to attend a variety of conferences.
I'm not a member of ALEC, and I haven't been to any of their conferences yet, but I certainly hope to. And I've been to their website, I've read some of their materials, and they're certainly a helpful think tank in offering different perspectives, and also for what's going on in other states to kind of see proactively some of the issues they face and proposing potential legislation and how to make our state the best it can be.
I'm definitely a member of ALEC, and very grateful for the experience. From early on, we realized that most of the NCSL was so far left of where we were in Florida that we really didn't learn much there. They were just some of them kind of hoping to do some of the things we had already been doing as a more conservative government. Florida is 20 million people. I mean, we're at a tipping point, and when we try things here and we have a record with it and some reporting on it, it's not unusual to take it as model legislation, such as I'm Father of Stand Your Ground. That was not started by ALEC. We built that bill in Florida, took it to ALEC and said, here's some model legislation we think will empower people to stop violence. This is the 46th year, the lowest violent crime rate in Florida. I think our policies are working to empower law-abiding people to stop violence.
It's not true.
And that's what I see. That's what I got.
30% on homicides.
Well,
Yeah.
we can all pick our figures, but I'm telling you,
How about facts?
there's different statistics, and everybody uses the ones they like and that support their position. But I am totally unapologetic about participating, and I'm also going to NCSL to learn and see what other ideas are being circulated. And I think it saves a lot of time to share ideas between legislators. And yes, the private sector too gets to be a part of that discussion. This is America. And so I'm kind of perturbed, as you can tell, by the blistering attack that ALEC's been under, when actually we've had some great legislation come out of that sharing opportunity. And I welcome the fact that many people will see some of the issues different than I do, and that's what's great about this country. Thank you.
Catherine Williamson asks, for at least 2 sessions now, bills have been filed to put an amendment on the ballot to stop denying the right to vote to felons who have met all of the requirements of their sentencing. Will you vote for this bill? If not, why do you think someone who has met all requirements should never be allowed to vote in Florida?
This issue has come up more recently in the media, and I think there's a group right now circulating a petition to put it on the ballot in 2018. I believe they've met their first threshold with the Supreme Court of Florida on the language, and now they're out collecting signatures. So that process will continue to unfold as people work on it, and we'll have to see if they actually get it on the ballot. That's when we'll have our decision to make based at that time. I'm not aware of anybody currently working on anything other than that. Obviously, I don't decide how to vote on a bill until I have had a chance to study it, hear it in committee, hear it on the floor, and then make a decision at that time based on all of the constituent input and member arguments that are made for and against. That's the process working. If you commit to something so early where you haven't even seen it, but you say, "I'll vote for it," you're really circumventing the process because you're saying, "I'm not willing to listen to anybody else after today because I've already said I'm going to vote for or against it today. Therefore, what you say in the future doesn't have any impact on me because I'm committed already." So I'm not able to say what I would do with that concept that's been floating around out there. But I think it's a tribute to our Florida Constitution that there is a citizen initiative process where people can bring these things forward on their own if they choose to do so. And I like that. I like the idea that we have that option for people. So we'll have to see what happens. And when we get a bill or a minute to vote on, then we'll see what it says and what the impacts are, what the arguments are for and against, and then I'll make my decision at that time. Thank you.
Now Bill Stomp has a question.
Do we let the other people answer?
With regard to felons being able to vote, I think it's something that we could look at, but I think it needs to be a arduous process. I don't think it needs to be an automatic thing that happens easily. I think it needs to be a process that people go through and decide. These people are dependent on what they have done. They may have paid the penalty, but they may not have paid back and earned the right to have all of the aspects. So I think there needs to be something to be looked at, but I don't think it needs to be an automatic process.
I would need to do more research into it as well. It's not an issue that I have researched in depth. I would say, though, that I would probably lean towards more of the side of not changing it, so I would remain open-minded and consider more perspectives, just because I do think that we all do have the right to vote. And that, if taken away, is only by our own actions. So I do think that we all start out on an even playing field and that we can all register to vote. And if anyone in this room hasn't registered to vote, please do so, no matter if you're Republican or Democrat, because it's an incredible privilege. And men and women die for our freedom to be able to vote and be engaged in this process. And I think it's a process that we need to take more personal responsibility in using. And therefore, I think it should not be something that's taken lightly. And so if you do a heinous crime and part of your punishment is getting that revoked, I think that needs to play into your actions, and there's certain punishments in place. With that being said, I'm certainly willing to hear different perspectives, but that's kind of foundationally from the perspective I would start at.
I'm very much a smart justice advocate. I believe in accountability, but I also believe in redemption. And I think there should always be a path back. And I couldn't agree with anyone more on that position. There's 100,000 inmates or better in the state system. I've been in 17 prisons in the last 2 years visiting and trying to figure out how do we do this better. Because the fact is, 85% of that 100,000, they're coming home within 5 years. They're going to be your neighbors and friends. They're going to be at school. They're going to be at work. They're going to be at the Jiffy store. If we did not correct something, we don't run a department of adjudication. We run a department of correction. The key is to drive down recidivism and work on things that help them re-enter and have a life where they have paid their dues and they're recovering and we're working with them and walking with them. And that will save us billions of dollars in cost. Billions of dollars. And improve lives where breadwinners are home and surviving and recovering. Can we do that with everybody? Probably not. There will be some recidivism. But the fact is there's a lot of people, and there are things that we can do to evaluate people today to tell you who is most likely to respond and who is hard to a point, whatever life has brought them, that they're really, really difficult to turn. And the fact is, there's a few people that you don't have to do anything. You know, something happened, they had a terrible night, drank too much at a party, killed 2 people in a wreck. It'll never happen again in their lives. You don't have to do anything. And then you've got some on the other far end who their lives are so damaged It's almost nothing you can do to seem to retrieve them. There's a huge group in the middle that how we handle things while we're there could make a big difference in correction. So with voting rights, I believe the same perspective. I don't think it should be automatic. I think it should be a matter that there should be an application process when you think you're ready and you want to restore your rights. But I think we have a lot of improving to do to respond more favorably to those requests and to those witnesses that say, this person has changed direction. If they're a repeat offender, that's why I wouldn't want automatic. And you don't know what's going to happen. But if they don't demonstrate the initiative to want those rights and apply for those rights, that's a part of a self-fulfilling prophecy that says it's of value and I will seek it. But we need a better response when that happens. I don't like the level at which we're responding now. I think there's people that should be restored that haven't yet. Thank you.
I should probably be sitting between Representative Sullivan and Senator Baxley because I'm straddling the fence on this one. While I strongly believe that voting in the United States is a privilege and one that we ought to jealously guard and protect as citizens. The requirements are simple. You have to be a citizen of some certain age and have a clear record with no felonies. Having said that, our criminal system is not serving some of our people very well at the moment. And some changes have to be made. And that includes a group of people I'm sure that many of you are referring to that are in that group of felons that have served their time, paid the price, and trying to return to become responsible, productive members of society and return to their homes, their neighborhoods, their families, and get on with their lives. That excludes a lot of people that are in our criminal justice system that belong incarcerated. Those hardened criminals that are doing those heinous crimes that you referred to, the aggravated assaults, the rapes, the murders, and so on, and those repeat offenders who cannot be saved. Those people should not earn that privilege or be given that privilege back because they have not earned it. So I'm willing to consider, like many of our members have stated, something that serves the rightful purpose to give that privilege back to those that deserve it. That's my position, and I'd be willing to look at legislation.
Bill Stump asks, E-Verify. Currently, law allows this system to be used only during a hiring process. The law does not allow it to be used post-hiring. Therefore, any employee currently employed who was bypassed on the initial test certification can still be illegal. What can be done to reacting to this omission? Yes. Okay.
Let the lawyer do it.
The lawyer again.
Well, thank you. This question obviously has a bigger picture issue involved in it. The E-Verify is one component of it, but we're talking about what are we going to do about illegal immigration and what role can we play at the state level on that. Now, I have a position on this, and my position is based on the rule of law. It's not based on being anti-immigrant. My grandparents met on a steamship coming from Germany in the 1920s. They went through Ellis Island, and I've seen their papers. They were legal. They did it the right way. And we have a very generous legal immigration system in this country, which is a good thing. We allow over 1 million people a year to come here legally. And that's a good thing because we have a very diverse country with a lot of American success stories because of immigration, including in my own family. But if you're going to have a legal system that works, which we do have if we are letting over 1 million people in every year, you have to enforce the law that it's based upon. If you say it's okay to have an illegal system also, and that illegal system is easier for people to navigate, you're going to get more illegal immigration and you're going to get less legal immigration. And there's a lot of risks involved in illegal immigration. You don't know who's coming, you don't know anything about their background, you don't know anything about their health, their financial wherewithal. That's why we have an immigration system, to vet them out. So when we let them come in legally, we know where they fit in terms of our economy and our society, so that they can then contribute positively to our country. E-Verify is only one tool in the toolbox to try to curtail illegal immigration. It's not mandatory in Florida. It should be, in my opinion. I voted for a bill in committee in my first term that was run at that time, but I believe, as I recall, there was no movement on that bill in the Senate, so it didn't make its way to the floor of the House that term. But we need to have mandatory E-Verify. It is a law now with contracts, but not, generally speaking, applicable. But E-Verify would only be one part of it. We have to really enforce existing immigration law, and the state of Florida should take a role in that. We're not going to be in a separate immigration force in that regard, but we should cooperate with the federal government when they need our help enforcing existing federal immigration law. And the Sanctuary Cities Prohibition Bill that I sponsored the last 2 years would move us in that direction, so that we would then be a partner with the federal government in enforcing the laws that exist now, thereby strengthening the illegal immigration system and curtailing the use of illegal immigration as a primary means of immigrating to this country. So that bill passed the House 2 years in a row. It went to the Senate. It did not get a hearing over there. I'm hoping that the Senate will reconsider its position on this, because if we can truly enforce existing immigration law, that will strengthen legal immigration. If you want more of something, reward it. If you want less of something, penalize and tax it. And we're going to get more illegal immigration if we keep rewarding it through sanctuary policies and through loose hiring practices that have no E-Verify component to it. So I support these efforts because I believe in the rule of law, and I believe if we are able to be successful in these types of efforts, we'll actually improve legal immigration, and that will help advance our country. Thank you very much.
Good answer, Larry.
Very quickly, I would just like to say a couple of times you may have heard some of the members say that this or that did not happen in the Senate. I will tell you, I haven't taken a moment to speak on all of them, but in this situation and a lot of the others, I actually agree with the representative, and if I were president of the Senate, it might have been different. I'm not. I'm part of the Senate, but I'm not the Senate. I absolutely agree 100% with Representative Metz.
What about bilingual only? You have to be bilingual to get a job, no matter how long you've been in
I so appreciate your question. We worked really hard to keep this structure this evening. And we're running short on time, and we want to get some other questions. So we're going to go ahead and let our moderator continue with the questions. However, we'll each probably be here for a few minutes afterwards, and I know we'd be happy to answer your questions. Then.
I have 3 questions that don't have email addresses. So I'd like to ask those 3 questions of you, and then the others that have email addresses, you could answer those that are in your districts or, okay. From Sue Jantz, she asks, Medicaid covers about 60% of all long-term care spending. Also, it's estimated that 80,000 jobs will be lost in Florida if the GOP health care bill becomes law. What will happen to nursing homes, the workers, and the frail elderly they serve? What action are you taking to offset this life-threatening and job-killing legislation?
It's a combination of conversation in that question. Obviously, portion of that comes from the federal government. But with regards to the state portion of how we handle long-term care, which is how the state handles the monies that come to us and what we do, we're very efficient with our long-term care dollars. I ran a bill this year, though, that gave more flexibility back to the individuals who are in a nursing home. If you're in a nursing, we have in Florida a managed Medicaid system, so where those dollars come, and we maximize our individuals in the state of Florida who are on Medicaid, very similar to how you would do it as a private employer with your HMO, to making sure that we're using those resources efficiently. But with regards to long-term care, it ended up being just another level of government. One of the things that we did was to say if you're in a nursing home and you have been there and you're going to stay there with no hope of ever leaving that nursing home, you come out from underneath the managed Medicaid system and long-term care system, and the monies go directly to that nursing home just to allow you to utilize their bus as opposed to coordinating through an HMO and that type of thing, hoping to help the individual who's in that situation. But what I can tell you, the federal government's going to make their decisions. I can't control what they do as far as the funding pieces of it, but I will tell you that when those dollars do come to the state of Florida, we have in processes to utilize them as efficiently as possible, making sure that the individuals in the state have quality care in the most efficient way possible.
Elizabeth Kapoor? Okay, sorry. Tonight, Senator Baxley thanked God for the privilege of living in a participating democracy. 2 years ago, 75% of Florida's voters passed Amendment 1, which provides for restoration of Florida Forever funding. If this isn't participating democracy, I don't know what is. Yet you continue to ignore the will of the people. Please justify this. Yeah.
Sorry, my name was on it. Actually, I don't defy the will of the people. The fact is, go back and read the amendment. It doesn't say that you just buy property with it. And this is where the misunderstanding is coming with some of the lockdown in the environmental communities. They think all we can do is buy land. Let me tell you what, we own so much land. Over a third of my Senate district is publicly held land. Lakes, rivers, streams. We've done a good job and have continued in Florida Forever to keep buying land. But more importantly is the projects that we do that protect the groundwater. That's part of that promise and that commitment. And I don't see a thing wrong with spending resources that will protect our groundwater when that's the proposal and that's the plan forward. But you take all of that property off the tax rolls and we own it publicly, you no longer have any income tax. I'll tell you what I really prefer is in agriculture, we've got land uses where we can buy the development rights. They can keep using it in a low density way, of farming. We can keep it in production, yet eliminate that from becoming a part of intensive development. I would love to see us buy more development rights than buying up all the land and taking it out of the tax market. All I can tell you is it's going to load on you. Whoever's already got some property, your property taxes are going up. The more land that the government owns, the less it will be used in the private sector. But I think we very much support the intent and understanding of that legislation. Go back and read what the amendment says.
Let's pave over Florida.
Not at all. Like I said, I'm very pleased that we have over a third of this district that's publicly held lands that are cared for. And just because some cause has an effective line that rings true, and it's fun to yell and scream it, doesn't mean it's true. I go back and look at good public policy. I've got 5 kids and 8 grandkids, and this is their home. I care about their generation and what will happen. I want them to have the Florida I was given, that many before me took care of. And there are things we can do better, and we need to continue to do better. But to say that we're going to do it by stopping development and taking all private property rights away from the people is a big mistake in my mind. But we will have to continue to have this debate of what is the proper balance. And but I agree with the amendment. We need to take care of the groundwater. We need to take care of the future. We need to take care of our water quality and our environment. It's worthy. The balance is what are the different ways to do that are most meaningful and that also do not squash the economic viability of our people. How about those kids that don't eat? How about those families that need to survive? That's part of the formula too. Public policy. But thank you for coming tonight. It's been a great exchange, and I really appreciate you organizing the opportunity for us to be together.
Thank you. Our time is cutting close, but I am, and we'll each get an opportunity to wrap up. But I want to just jump on this because I've gotten asked this question a lot recently, and so I've been doing some research of my own to better have a more specific answer. Because every time I hear this question asked, it's asked, very broadly about the amendment and what we're quote-unquote not doing. And I just want to give you some specific numbers, and then I'd love to follow up with some of you after. But this year alone, we're spending over $213.2 million on Everglades restoration. We're spending over $50 million on springs restoration projects, $63.3 million on beach projects, $55.6 million on water projects, $132 million on hazardous waste cleanup. These are just a few of the many projects that we're working on across the state of Florida to help keep the environment clean, to be good stewards of the land we already own, because I've been in agriculture committees where we're struggling to keep men on the ground to protect us against the wildfires on all the land that we do own, and to also keep invasive species from taking over these areas. So please know that we do want to be a good steward of our environment. We want to be a good steward of what we're called to do, and we're taking action each year to do those things. And we welcome your perspective to the debate if you think we need to move the monies around that we are spending in different areas. But know that we're taking action, and there's specific numbers to back up the action we've taken.
Before we end this evening, I have two brief announcements. One is Vance Jochim has been filming all of this tonight. He will be having it later tonight on YouTube.
Nope. Give me a date. Give me a date.
It's Fiscal Rangers, Florida. It will be on YouTube. And also, there is a Lake County Legislative Delegations hearings is way longer than this night is. It starts at 1:30. They stay until 4 or 5 if necessary. So it is August 28th. It's Monday, and it is from 1:30 till 4 at Lake Center State College. So if you've enjoyed listening to our representatives, please join us on that day. And with that, I'll let you, we're going to start with Larry, and we'll come back this way to finalize your thoughts.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be here this evening. I think we had a really great town hall meeting tonight. We had a lot of information exchanged, and there's a lot of work to be done, as you can see from what we've said already. Just to give you a little bit of a preview of what happens next. In the House, and I believe in the Senate also, our committee assignments expire every year in the summer. So the Speaker and his team, leadership team, will be working on House member committee assignments, and by August the 1st or thereabouts, we'll know what our committee assignments are for the next session. Then in September, we begin our first of 5 committee weeks throughout the fall. 1 week in September, a few weeks in October, November, 1 in December, and we will be finished with our committee hearings before Christmas arrives in the legislative process. And then our session begins in early January and ends 60 days later. We've accelerated the session next year like we've done in the past, and so we can see if we can get the work done sooner and give the state of Florida agencies more time to implement our budget decisions. And also it's an election year, so that gets us out of there sooner, which will help the changes that we make be implemented and understood. So that's the process going forward. We have a lot of work to do. As we mentioned, some of the bills we ran that didn't make it through have to come back again. There'll be new bills that will come up, even ones that we don't even know about right now as we're speaking, because someone might call our office, like happened in 2015 with first responders, and have an idea that we want to take on. So I encourage you to think about that. It's very helpful if you're going to give input on the legislative process that you sort of be specific with us about it. Sometimes we get emails from people and they just say, do more for education, or we think we should protect the environment more. And while that's a thought and it can be understood, it's hard to know what they're talking about specifically. Whereas if you have someone come in with a bill idea, or they see a bill already filed and they want to have it supported or opposed, they come and say, support that bill, or amend that bill, or oppose that bill. Now we have a more specific charge that we get. And what happens in a House district of 157,000 people, when you start hearing that at different places along the way, you start getting more emails, and they're not form emails, they're true original emails. You start getting a sense of your district, and it helps you understand what you might be doing to help represent the people that you've been hired to represent. So I encourage your input that way. Be specific about what you expect from us, and help us understand that better, so that when we go forward, we know where you stand. And if enough of you do that from different parts of our districts, we then sense the will of the district, and that's something we need to act on at that point. So I just encourage your continued participation, and thank you again for coming tonight.
And I also want to thank you for being here this evening. You know, it's unique what we have in the United States, which we are representative democracy republic, where we go forward and represent you. But I don't have all of the ideas. I don't work in the business that you work in. I'm a personal property manager. You know, Representative Metz is an attorney. Senator Baxley is a funeral director in previous life. We have what we've brought to this process through our experiences, me raising a family, children, grandchildren. You have a different set of experiences. You have different times in your life where you've either gone up against government, where government's been in the way for you, or where government's been a help and it needs to be encouraged. So what I challenge you is please let us know what we can do to help you. That's what we're here for. That's what you hired us to do when you elected us a few years ago, is to go forward and do what we can do to help you. And recognize too, and as you may have seen just in a little bit of discussion that we had here this evening, there's not just two sides to every issue, there's about 47. So recognizing too, when you may give us a suggestion and we put it out there, we're going to hear from all of those other sides as well, and that's how public policy happens. And oftentimes it takes many, many years for a bill to become a law, as it should be, so we can work out all of those kinks. And one final thing I want to say on something I wanted to say earlier that I didn't grab the microphone back in the discussion of felonies. Also, keep in mind, too, I find myself being almost hypocritical in this world as well. You want to make everything a strong crime. Something's happened, it was an injustice, and you want it to be a felony. So you push for it to be more and more of a felony. But on the flip side, felonies have very severe and extreme consequences. So you also have to keep in mind, what are you going to be doing to that individual when you make something a felony? So as you're advocating and as you're looking at things, and those are all very personal and emotional situations oftentimes, depending on which side you're on. We try to keep that in mind. We try to keep that in mind. And as we go forward, just as an example, if a student steals a cell phone these days, that's a felony. I mean, should that really be a felony? Because cell phones can be worth up over $1,000. So we try to reconcile with that and put that into our heart when we're making decisions. But I welcome your input. I welcome your suggestions. I welcome your life experiences and what you can do as you're going forward on some solutions, how we can work together to make Florida the best state to live in.
Well, thank you all again for coming out this evening. In closing, I just want to touch on one policy that wasn't talked too much about tonight, but certainly was almost the entirety of my session, and that was education. I sit on Education Innovation, K-12 Appropriations, the full Education Committee, and 7069, there's been a lot of misinformation about that. And one of the reasons why I ran for office was help to reduce testing, to bring up the standard of excellence, and also to make education more student-centered and to give parents more choice. And since being in the legislature day after day, that's what I have worked for, am working for, and will continue to work for. And so some of the results of that hard work included eliminating the Algebra 2 EOC. It may just sound like one exam, but let me tell you, in the legislature, incremental progress is progress, and it takes time to make progress. So that's one test down and a lot more to go, that's for sure. We're also now giving the paper pencil option. There were so many parents and teachers who came to my office 3 years ago when I first got elected and said, please give us a paper and pencil option so we don't have to spend 2 weeks testing, going through computers, but we can do it on one day. And we've now given them that option. There's also the district assessment results. We were requiring those to be given to parents and teachers in a much more timely fashion within just a couple weeks of that happening. Also making it more transparent. When we're done using those tests, we're now going to make them public so that parents can actually see the tests that their children are taking and the questions that are on those tests for greater accountability. And also, two last things that I know we're going over time here, but are so important regarding this, is the Schools of Hope, that $150 million was put forward. I just want to dispel the misnomer that that means that those public schools are going to be closed. It doesn't. Though they've been failing for over 3 years, there's some public schools that have been failing for over 10 to 12 years. Think about the elementary school where a child has gone for years of their life in failing school with no opportunity. And what this does is this gives a charter school the opportunity to come within a certain mile radius of that public school to give parents another option. But those public schools still have the opportunity to be turned around. And believe me, we're still pouring money in those schools and hoping for the best in that. And lastly, a huge win from our Lake County delegation meeting just a few months ago before legislative session started. There were parents who came and presented us with textbooks and books that their children were reading in public schools that were incredibly inappropriate and there was no accountability of. And a good friend of mine, Representative Donald, that's his first name, I'm blanking on his last name, Byron, yes, Byron Donald. He worked on a bill, and I just want to give a shout out to the Dubois as well, because they were up in Tallahassee tirelessly working on this bill specifically, and it passed and was signed into law. And what it does is it gives local control for there to be a board forum that involves teachers and parents and other people to review textbooks and make decisions on things that they don't believe should be in their public schools. There was a lot more good things packed into 7069 that you won't read in the paper, that you won't hear anyone else, but I spent a lot of hours working on it. So know that I'm happy to talk about it. It's definitely my soapbox. But it's something I'm passionate about and will continue to work for, and that's more choice in our education, improving our public schools, and making our education more child-centered. So please continue to voice your concerns. We'll be in touch with you. The delegation meeting is just next month. It's before committees start intentionally so that we can hear your concerns before we get to work again. So thank you again for being here tonight.
I'm still totally amazed to see how many people walked past their TV and came here because they love Lake County and they love this great state.
And Larry Metz, too.
Thank you for what you provided by your presence tonight and the dialogue. I want you to go after issues passionately that you care about. Just don't hurt each other. I tell members this all the time. Because in 15 minutes we'll be on another bill and we might be best allies. So take care of each other. And as I heard a black lady preacher told me one day, and she was standing up on the platform and she looked down and she said, God loves you, I love you, and ain't nothing you can do about that. God bless you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Representative Sullivan, for the arrangements of this meeting tonight. It was a great turnout. I hope it was beneficial to you. I want to remind you of one thing that you probably already know. You've heard it a few times. We're over 20 million people here in the state of Florida. A couple of years ago, we passed New York as the third most populous state. If we keep growing at this rate, we'll have 26 million by 2030. That's what happens when 1,000 people a day move into Florida. Those are the types of things that we need to prepare for to address some of your concerns tonight, to continue to preserve our resources while providing the jobs and expanding our business and continue to make Florida business-friendly, family-friendly, tourist-friendly, retirement-friendly, and the greatest place in the nation to live. It should be a destination of choice for families, for businesses, business people, as well as retirees. We're working hard toward that end. And if you want a single point of measurement, did we make it better for our having been here? So I'd ask you not just for yourselves, but think about us too, because this is an election year. It's interesting no one mentioned that. This is an election year coming up, and most of the folks here are going to be on the ballot this time. Take out the report card and see how we did. Are we addressing your issues? Are we making Florida better? Is it safer, more secure, and the best place in the nation to live? So thank you very much. We'll be working toward those things where Florida is doing well to make it better, and there are those areas where we're not doing quite so well to make them a whole lot better. Thank you very much for coming.
I would be remiss not to thank the officers that came out here tonight. Can we please give them a round of applause?